It was a quiet night, the kind where most people are either fast asleep or wrapping up their late shifts. But for one black nurse heading home, things took a disturbing turn. As she walked to her car, a police cruiser pulled up, and out stepped an officer with an attitude. What started as a routine encounter quickly escalated into a tense confrontation, with the cop throwing around authority in all the wrong ways. Little did he know, the woman he was harassing wasn't just any nurse. She had a powerful connection that could turn his world upside down. She was the daughter of the police commissioner. As the situation unfolds, the officer's true colors are revealed, and so is a surprising twist that leaves everyone stunned. How will this encounter end? And what consequences will follow for the cop who thought he was in control? Stay tuned to find out. As the officer continued his aggressive questioning, the nurse tried to stay calm, though her heart was pounding. She explained she was just finishing her shift at the hospital, hoping to defuse the situation. But the cop wasn't interested in listening. His tone was sharp, his questions intrusive, and his accusations unfounded. He seemed determined to make her feel small, as if her only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. What the officer didn't realize was that this nurse wasn't easily intimidated. She had spent years working in high-pressure situations, saving lives and standing up for what's right. Tonight was no different, but instead of a patient in need, it was her dignity and safety on a line. The tension thickened as she reached for her phone, not to escalate, but to protect herself. Unbeknownst to the officer, a storm was brewing, a storm that would change everything. As the nurse stood her ground, the officer grew more agitated. He accused her of being disrespectful, of hiding something, even though she had done nothing wrong. The street was eerily quiet, with only the distant hum of traffic breaking the silence. She could feel the weight of his gaze, the power dynamic at play, but she refused to back down. Her fingers trembled slightly as she hit record on her phone, capturing every word, every gesture. Meanwhile, another perspective was quietly watching from a nearby window. An elderly neighbor, who had seen too many of these encounters end badly, kept a watchful eye. She debated whether to step in or call for help, fearing for the young woman's safety. The tension in the air was palpable, and the minutes felt like hours. The nurse, however, was unwavering. She knew she had a card to play, but the time wasn't right. Not yet. She waited, hoping to de-escalate the situation, even as the officer's frustration grew. The night was far from over, and the story was only beginning to unfold. The officer's patience was wearing thin, and his voice grew louder with each passing moment. He demanded the nurse step away from her car, his hand hovering near his belt, as if ready to escalate the situation further. The tension was unbearable, each second dragging on as the streetlight cast long shadows across the scene. The nurse, though visibly shaken, remained composed. She knew that one wrong move could make things worse. As the officer reached for his radio, she finally spoke up, her voice calm but firm. "You might want to think carefully about what you're doing," she said, her eyes locking with his. The officer sneered, brushing off her warning as an empty threat. But just as he was about to call for backup, another voice cut through the night. A commanding voice, one that carried authority and demanded attention. The officer froze, his face paling as he slowly turned around. The climax was approaching, and the truth was about to come crashing down, but no one could predict just how explosive the fallout would be. The commanding voice belonged to none other than another officer, stepping out of an unmarked car that had quietly pulled up moments earlier. His presence was unexpected, and his stern expression made it clear he wasn't there by chance. The harassing officer's demeanor shifted instantly, his bravado faltering as he recognized the newcomer. The nurse watched carefully, her mind racing. She had hoped her calm defiance would be enough. But this new development added another layer of complexity. The second officer approached, his eyes scanning the situation before landing on the nurse. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he asked, his tone noticeably more respectful. Before she could respond, the first officer stammered, trying to explain himself, but the second officer cut him off. I'm here because of her, he said, gesturing toward the nurse. Do you even know who she is? The question hung in the air, a chilling reminder that the night was far from over, and the stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined. The first officer stood frozen, his confidence crumbling as the second officer's words sank in. The nurse finally broke her silence, stepping forward with a quiet but powerful presence. I tried to tell you, she said, her voice steady. I'm the daughter of the police commissioner. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. The harassing officer's face drained of color, his mouth opening and closing as he struggled to process the information. The second officer turned to him, his eyes narrowing. You've just made a serious mistake, he said coldly. You're going to answer for this. But just as the situation seemed to reach its peak, the nurse spoke again. I'm not here to ruin careers, she said, looking directly at the officer who had harassed her. I'm here to make sure this never happens again, to anyone. Her words carried weight, a surprising twist that shifted the focus from punishment to change. As the harassing officer was led away, the nurse stood tall, knowing this was just the beginning of a larger battle for justice. The night ended with a powerful reminder. Sometimes, the most unexpected people carry the greatest strength. As the night came to a close, the nurse took a deep breath, reflecting on what had just unfolded. She knew that while this incident was over, the fight for fairness and accountability was far from finished. Her actions tonight weren't just about herself, they were about making sure no one else would have to face what she did. The second officer, now fully aware of the gravity of the situation, assured her that steps would be taken to address the behavior of his colleague. We'll ensure this is handled properly, he promised, his tone sincere. As she finally got into her car and drove away, the nurse felt a mix of exhaustion and relief. She had stood up for herself and, in doing so, made a statement against injustice. This was a night she would never forget, a powerful reminder of the strength found in courage and the importance of speaking out.